Welcome back to Tons Two Cents, the podcast where we bring unfiltered strategies for real world success in government contracting. In today's episodes, it's titled CMMC Simplified, Safeguard Your Business and Win More Contracts. But let me tell you, this isn't your typical compliance walkthrough. We're not here to drown you into legal jargon or dry policy updates. Well, there might be some of that. But we're here to really kind of break down why the cybersecurity maturity model certification matters in GovCon. And more importantly, what does it mean to your business and your bottom line? So, cybersecurity has been a hot topic for decades. It's not just a buzzword, it's reality for a lot of us. So, think about this. A few months ago, a major contractor experienced a breach. It exposed sensitive government data. And that incident alone caused ripple effects throughout the defense industrial base, or the DIB, as we like to call it. And the stakes couldn't be higher, and the government knows that, and so does our new president. And that's why CMMC was introduced to secure the supply chain and to hold every government contractor accountable. So, to help us navigate this really critical industry topic, I'm thrilled to have two experts in our field here today joining us, and they'll share their practical insights and tips on how to help you prepare for the new requirements and ideally come out ahead. So, joining here today with me are Roger Curtis from Mazur Technologies and Andrew Hare, who are professionals with years of experience in cybersecurity and defense contracting. Roger has been on the front lines of cybersecurity strategy for over a decade, guiding customers to achieve strong cybersecurity posture. His expertise in risk management and gap analysis has saved countless companies from potential pitfalls. Roger is also a CMMC certified professional. Now, Andrew, on the other hand, he's a troublemaker. He brings a different angle. He specializes in implementing scalable solutions that not only meet compliance requirements, but also fit seamlessly into existing operations. Because let's be honest, nobody wants a solution that disrupts the entire workflow. Andrew is also an experienced facility security officer. Roger and Andrew, thanks so much for coming on to our podcast today and say hello to our listeners, who we call intellectuals, and share a little bit about yourself and your experience with our defense sector.
All right. Well, I will go first. Thank you, Ton. My name is Andrew Hare with Mazur Technologies. I have been in the government world in some form or fashion for over 40 years. Started as an Army officer. Then I've also spent time working with state and local government organizations as a planner and also as a network administrator as well. I bring 40 years of business development, IT project management, proposal management and development experience, and also facility security. Worked in classified programs. So a lot of what we're talking about today is sort of something that I have been swimming in, through, or around for many, many years, mostly in the PM and the business development side of the equation.
And I'm Roger Curtis. Have over 20 years of IT experience, 10 years with Mazur Technologies, and focused on supporting the commercial MSP and MSSP customers that we have. Additionally, I have considerable experience auditing customers, security and industry standard compliance frameworks, and their posture.
Well, thanks for joining. And we're going to be talking about a lot of acronyms. And so I'm guilty of using acronyms that I don't ever define. And then I'm like stumped, like, what is that acronym? But I will have to ask MSP and MSSP, what are those acronyms?
I'll take that one. So MSP is the managed IT space. So managed security provider, our managed services provider, and then the MSSP is kind of an add-on to that in the last few years, where it's a managed security services provider. So providing that cybersecurity know-how for customers that need IT outsourced services.
Got it. Decades back, I was in a meeting and someone said COB, and I kept nodding my head like I knew exactly what COB was. And then I pulled someone aside and I was like, what is COB? And they're like, close of business. I'm like, oh, okay. So that puts a whole different context on the conversation. So um, again, that was an easy test. You passed that test. We can move on to our rest of our conversation. But before we kind of get into the details of the program, of the CMMC program, I always like to ask our guest lighthearted type of question. But if you could compare today's cybersecurity landscape to a movie or a TV show, I binge watch TV all the time. What would it be and why? And I'm kind of curious. Um, are we living in like a Mission Impossible type of scenario with like high stakes all the time, or is this more like the surreal Black Mirror where we're just one click away from chaos? Because a lot of things in Black Mirror have come true. What do you guys think?
Well, that's a good question. There are a lot of candidates. I'd like to think today's cybersecurity landscape, if we want to define it that way, is something like the movie The Matrix, which is a constant battle against hidden threats. And Neo and his team are always trying to adapt to whatever that threat is. And it's just this constant battle, which I think pretty much sums up not just CMMC, but what's behind it. And that's the cybersecurity threats that
Mhm.
we all face and are real, and they're not going away.
It's pretty real. Roger, did you have one?
I think I echo that as well. But then now thinking with AI, I'm thinking and worried about Terminator, Skynet, and taking over the world. So
Right? And with the new AI companies, did they seriously call it Stargate? Because I'm like, I love that movie and that show, Stargate,
hmm
time
sure.
portal. So I'm going to be really kind of curious to see what comes out of that
Well, like they say, art
public-private.
imitates life, or maybe the other way around. So,
Life imitates fiction. I don't know. Life is fiction. I guess we shall see, right? It's a brave new world here. Um, Well, this is great. So, again, there's a lot of current events that we want to talk about. And so let's just kind of roll right into our episode for our first segment, which is I always like to have an overview, a level setting basis to that we're all kind of on the same page. Now, from a CMMC overview, we really do need to make sure that we talk about and highlight a little bit how does the new administration's executive order impact CMMC. So it's been in the news for a while, the CMC updates, and we've been talking about this for years about when it's going to go into effect and what it's going to mean for the defense industrial base. But not everybody fully understands that, and there's a lot of controversy behind that, and we're going to unpack that in this episode. Um, but can you explain a little bit about CMMC, its purpose, and how it really kind of fits into like the bigger picture for cybersecurity? Because cybersecurity is not new, and neither is CMMC. But we're all of a sudden, like having to kind of pay attention to it.
Well, let's dig into what the CMMC program is. It's definitely a stab at government contractors attestating their cybersecurity posture, and it's designed to protect federal contract information (FCI). That term is out there quite a bit, as well as CUI, or controlled unclassified information, and how that information is shared between the Department of Defense currently and contractors and subcontractors of the DoD. The goal is to ensure that the contractors meet all the cybersecurity requirements for the acquisition program, and for there's different levels, and so I'm making sure that contractors are doing what they're supposed to be doing based on the clauses in their contract. And there's three levels that we'll talk about a little bit further later, but those levels are going to be specified in contract. And CMMC is a way for either self-attestating, and then at higher levels having a certified third party or external assessor come in and review and certify that the contractor is doing everything they say they're going to, are contractually required to do. Now, why was it developed? It came about in around 2016 to address inefficiencies in safeguarding controlled unclassified information, um, because contractors were not meeting those contractual requirements. and they were being ineffective in what they were doing at the time, and so things were becoming, being exfiltrated. So the program also is designed to standardize the protection of this FCI sensitive information, as well as a CUI under the CUI program, which did come out of an EO several years ago, and then was given to federal organizations to codify it and provide information around what is CUI and so forth. So the executive order 13556 came out in 2010 to kind of kick that process or start the ball rolling for CUI and safeguarding CUI in federal practices. Now, CMMC started off, or the contract clauses that came out from that executive order and the years following started off with a self-attestation process where government contractors said, okay, I'm going to compete for a contract and I've been awarded that contract. There's a clause in the contract that says I need to do X, Y, and Z to protect this government information, but it's all my word. And so if I'm saying I'm doing it, there was no way for the government to come in and say, to validate it. So the self-attestation model has not really worked over time. So now moving into CMMC, this is bringing in the methodology to assess and review and validate the contractors are doing what they're supposed to be doing. The DIB is protecting government information. And so we're trying to foster a culture of cyber secure resiliency.
Yeah. And I think just like every, every requirement where there's a self-certification or self-attestation, I hate that word. It's so hard. Like I'm ESL, so I have issues with that word. That, it really does evolve into a more formalized and, it's kind of a natural evolution for a program such as CMMC. Um, but, like Andrew, the government has had cybersecurity requirements before. CMMC started under Trump 45. It's now continuing and ramping up and has finally come to fruition under Trump 47 here. And then there's the current executive order. And so how does the CMMC program now differ from like previous efforts that we have had before?
Well, that's a good question. CMMC, first and foremost, when you talk about CMMC itself as a Department of Defense oriented program or issue, I say that because the FAR rule came out recently that is not CMMC per se. The FAR 48, Part 48 CMMC rule came out. What we have not seen yet is its DoD brother, if you will, the 48, the CFR, FAR contracting rule. That's what's really different. I mean, as Roger said, I mean, this goes back all the way to 2010 and it has been in increments, CMMC 1, then CMMC 2. But the real meat on the bone is the contracting rule, because as Roger said, everything's self-attested. And until there was an incident or a whistleblower or something that motivated the government to look further into someone who was self-attested at 15 or 110 controls, then there really was no enforcement. There was no way to ensure that everyone's at that level of cybersecurity posture that they need to be at. So, but first off, 32 CFR 170 is now the law. So cybersecurity based on the NIST framework is the law. What we're waiting to find out and the next shoe to drop, when it drops, if it drops, is the 48 CFR DoD contracting rule. And we've had a bit of a fly in the ointment here recently, just very recently, and the president's executive order that is putting a bit of an overlay or a pause on Federal Register rules. I mean, I've read it. It's still TBD. We need to find out how this unfolds. But we're under the impression or thought that the 48 CFR contracting rule would drop any day now and start its 60-day rule-making period and then eventually lead into an implementation timeline that is really at the heart of CMMC. Right now, that is on pause. So that's really where we're at. And the difference between now versus a few years ago.
Yeah. All right. Well, I feel like we need to schedule a follow-up episode to this episode already with the new administration and how everything is going to settle out here when the dust settles a little bit.